My name is Rebecca Hayes, and I never thought betrayal could cut so deep until it came from my own mother. Imagine sitting in a courtroom fighting for the right to raise your child and hearing the woman who gave you life call you unfit, not because you were reckless, not because you were cruel, but because you were fat. Her words pierced through that room like knives. She can barely hold down a job. She can't even keep up with her son. Look at her. She's overweight, she's unstable. Tyler deserves better. Those weren't whispers in the dark. They were spoken loud under oath in front of a judge, lawyers, and a gallery full of strangers. And across the aisle, my ex husband smirked, feeding on every word, certain he was about to take my son away. But what they didn't know was this. For years, I had stayed silent, swallowing their comments, enduring the jokes, the side glances, the cruel assumptions. They thought my silence was weakness. They thought my size defined my worth. What they didn't realize is that I had spent my entire career proving people like them wrong. This is the story of how my family tried to shame me into losing everything and how I turned their cruelty into the very reason they lost. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this courtroom betrayal turned into the sweetest revenge of my life. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and cold coffee, the kind of place where lives are rearranged with a single sentence. I sat at the respondent's table in a navy blazer that suddenly felt too tight across my chest, my palms resting flat, forcing myself to stay steady. I wasn't here as a judge today. I was here as a mother fighting for her son. Across the aisle, Marcus leaned back in his chair wearing that smug smile I once mistook for confidence. His lawyer tapped a stack of papers like a drummer waiting for his solo. And in the witness box, God help me, sat my own mother. She cleared her throat, looked directly at the judge, and began her performance. Your Honor, my daughter has never been stable. She's overweight, she's undisciplined, and she can barely hold her life together. How can she possibly hold together a home for a child? The words hit me harder than any gavel. I had prepared for Marcus's attacks, for his endless complaints about my schedule, my so-called lack of energy. But nothing prepared me for this. Not from her. She can't keep up with Tyler. My mother continued, her voice rising with a strange conviction. I've seen her get winded just walking up the stairs. What kind of role model is that for an 8-year-old boy? Children need parents who can set examples of discipline, not laziness. There it was. The body shaming dressed up as testimony. My weight, my body, my very existence twisted into ammunition to take my son away. Marcus leaned forward, eyes glittering. His lawyer seized the moment. Your Honor, this is consistent with the evidence we plan to show. Mrs. Hayes's lack of physical fitness, her inability to manage a demanding workload, and her unstable lifestyle all pose risks to the child's well-being. From the gallery, whispers began to ripple. Strangers nodded along, like they already knew my story, like they had the right to judge the life I lived. My sister Karen sat beside Tyler in the front row, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her silence was as sharp as my mother's words. I glanced at Tyler. His small hands were clenched together in his lap, his dark eyes wide with confusion. He couldn't understand why his grandmother was painting his mother as a failure. He couldn't understand why no one stood up for me. And I said nothing. Not yet. 15 years on the bench had taught me the value of silence. Let them play their hand. Let them show their cards. Because when the truth comes, it cuts deeper than any lie. So I sat there back straight, heart pounding, while my own mother piled accusation upon accusation, each word another stone meant to bury me alive. Marcus's lawyer, James Crawford, rose like a man who had been waiting his whole career for this moment. He adjusted his tie, slid a folder onto the bench, and smiled the way predators smile when they smell blood. Your Honor, he began, we're not here to belittle Miss Hayes's size, but physical health and discipline directly affect a parent's ability to care for a child. And in this case, the evidence speaks for itself. He pulled out a blown up photo mounted on a board for everyone to see. It was me caught mid step at a school event last year, sweat beading on my forehead, my blouse sticking to me under the gymnasium lights. I remembered the moment I had rushed, straight from court, still in heels, trying to make it in time for Tyler's science fair. To him, I was just a mom showing up late. To Marcus, it became Exhibit A. The gallery chuckled. Strangers laughed at a frozen image of my exhaustion. My body, my humanity turned into a punchline. My stomach clenched, but I kept my eyes on the judge, refusing to give Marcus the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. Crawford wasn't finished. He pulled out a printout of text messages Marcus had provided. Look here, he said, reading aloud. She couldn't run after Tyler if he bolted into the street. She gets winded walking 3 blocks. This isn't safe for a child. The words stung not because they were lies, but because they were half-truths sharpened into weapons. Yes, I had gotten winded that day chasing after Tyler when he ran out of the car. But I caught him. I always caught him. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dripping with false concern. I'm not trying to shame her, Your Honor. I just want my son to grow up with a role model who values discipline and health. I work out 5 days a week. I run marathons. Children mirror their parents. What example is he supposed to follow with her? There it was, the strategy. They weren't attacking my parenting. They were attacking my body, knowing society is always eager to believe the worst about a fat woman. My mother nodded along eagerly from the witness stand. Exactly. She has no control. It shows in her appearance and it shows in her life. Tyler needs stability. He needs someone who won't collapse under the weight of responsibility. The cruelty in her choice of words wasn't lost on me. Collapse under the weight. She knew exactly what she was doing. Around me, the whispers grew louder. Every pair of eyes seemed to measure me, weigh me, judge me. My sister Karen still hadn't looked up, her silence screaming louder than any accusation. And Tyler, sweet Tyler, was staring at me with a furrowed brow, his small body tense with confusion. He couldn't understand why the people he trusted most were tearing me apart. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in front of me. Inside, the fire burned hotter. Let them talk. Let them twist photos and half-truths into daggers. Because in their desperation to shame me, they were revealing something more dangerous than my weight. They were revealing their bias. And bias in a courtroom is the sharpest blade you can hand to your opponent. What they didn't realize was that every word they used against me was building the very case I needed. And when it was my turn, I would make sure that blade cut back twice as deep. When Crawford finally sat down, satisfied with the trail of humiliation he'd laid behind him, Judge Morrison turned her gaze to me. Her tone was even professional. Miss Hayes, you've heard the allegations. How do you respond? For the first time that morning, I moved. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound of wood scraping against tile sharp in the silence. My knees locked for a moment. I wasn't nervous. I was furious. But fury has no place at counsel's table. Fury loses cases. So I straightened my blazer, steadied my voice, and walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, I said I'd like to call a witness to address those concerns. Crawford shot up immediately. Objection. We received no notice of additional witnesses. This is irregular. I kept my tone calm. The witness was unavailable until this morning. He has agreed to testify briefly, and his testimony goes directly to the allegations raised today. All eyes turned to Judge Morrison. She studied me for a beat, then nodded. Very well, call your witness. I walked to the heavy double doors, my heels echoing across the chamber. My hand gripped the brass handle, as if I were opening not just a door, but the very fate of this trial. And when I pulled it open, the air in the courtroom shifted. A tall man stepped inside. Impeccably tailored dark suit. Silver hair brushed back with deliberate care. Shoulders squared with the ease of someone who had carried authority for decades. Every step he took commanded silence. Your Honor, I said, my voice carrying clearly, I'd like to call Chief Justice William Barrett to the stand. The reaction was immediate. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I caught the flicker of panic in Marcus's eyes, the way his lawyer fumbled for his notes as though the papers might save him. And my mother? My mother's face drained of color, her mouth falling open as though she'd been struck. The bailiff swore him in. Chief Justice Barrett adjusted the microphone, his presence filling the courtroom without effort. I approached with measured steps, every move deliberate. Chief Justice Barrett, could you please identify me for the court? He looked at me directly, then at the judge. His voice was steady, formal, but there was a warmth there too. You are the Honorable Rebecca Hayes, Associate Justice of the State Court of Appeals, where you have served with distinction for the past 8 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the air seemed to hesitate. I could hear someone in the gallery gasp. Papers rustled. My mother's breath caught audibly in her throat. And could you describe the nature of my responsibilities? I asked. Justice Hayes presides over some of the state's most complex family and civil cases, Barrett replied. She has authored landmark decisions on child welfare and custody. She also chairs the Judicial Ethics Committee, and her rulings are cited in law schools across the country. The words cut through every lie that had been stacked against me. I saw Crawford shuffle his papers again, searching for a new angle. Marcus leaned back, his smirk gone, replaced with something that looked very much like fear. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Tyler's expression shift. Confusion melted into something else, pride. His little chest rose as though he had finally understood why his mom sometimes missed bedtime. I pressed on. Chief Justice, could you also speak to my financial stability? Justice Hayes earns an annual salary of $195,000 plus benefits, Barrett said. She owns her downtown condominium, maintains a secondary residence in the mountains, and her financial disclosures are part of the public record as required of all sitting judges. The words struck like thunder. Stability, security, authority. Everything Marcus had tried to strip away from me laid bare in black and white. I turned slowly, facing the courtroom. My mother sat frozen, the weight of her testimony crumbling around her. Marcus looked like a man whose carefully built tower had just been kicked out from under him. And in the front row, Tyler leaned forward, eyes wide, as if seeing me for the first time. I returned to the table, my pulse steady now. I wasn't the respondent anymore. I wasn't a fat woman being shamed into silence. I was who I had always been, a judge, a mother, and a woman who had spent her life standing for justice. Chief Justice Barrett's testimony had shifted the air in that courtroom, but I knew it wasn't enough to simply let his words hang. A courtroom is built on evidence, not awe. And if Marcus and my mother thought they could weaponize my body against me, I was about to show them how flimsy their weapons truly were. I stepped forward, my voice calm even. Your Honor, I'd like to submit 3 exhibits into the record. I slid a folder across the clerk's desk. Inside my most recent health clearance, Tyler's school and extracurricular schedule, and my financial disclosures. Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses, flipping through the pages. Crawford leaned forward, his face blanching as he realized exactly what I'd placed before the court. I turned to the gallery, not because I needed to, but because I wanted my mother, my ex-husband, and every person who had whispered about me to hear. For years I've listened to the narrative that my body disqualifies me, that being plus size somehow makes me less capable, less disciplined, less deserving. Today, my mother repeated those accusations under oath, and Marcus fed them because he knew society is eager to believe that a fat woman cannot be competent, cannot be strong, cannot be a good mother. My mother shifted uncomfortably on the stand. I didn't soften. The truth is this: my most recent medical report shows no conditions that impair my ability to care for my son. No diabetes, no heart disease, no mobility restrictions. I walk Tyler to school. I chase him when he runs. I sit with him at night when he struggles with homework. My body does all of that and more. I held up Tyler's schedule. Here is the proof. Every doctor's appointment, every soccer practice, every parent-teacher meeting. I have been there, consistently, presently. While Marcus was flying to conferences and skipping weekends, I was there. Tell me, is that instability? I moved to the next exhibit. And here are my financial disclosures. Nearly 200,000 a year. A fully paid downtown condo. A vacation home in the mountains. A college fund in Tyler's name. This is not instability. This is not neglect. This is responsibility. The silence in the room thickened. Crawford shuffled his papers, again searching for some opening. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Then I turned back to the judge. My voice grew stronger, sharper. Your Honor, we are not here to debate dress sizes. We are here to determine what is in the best interests of my son. And what the petitioner has done, what my mother has done, is attempt to replace evidence with prejudice, to use body shaming as if it were proof. But prejudice is not proof. Bias is not evidence. And fat is not a synonym for unfit. A murmur of agreement stirred in the gallery. For the first time, the whispers weren't against me. They were shifting, bending, breaking away from the narrative Marcus had tried to control. I locked eyes with my mother. What's most painful, Your Honor, is that these attacks did not come from strangers. They came from my own family. From people who never asked what my work required. From a husband who dismissed my career as a clerical job because he couldn't be bothered to learn otherwise. From a mother who never once looked past my size to see the substance of my life. Her eyes welled with tears, but I felt no pity. I faced Judge Morrison again. The petitioner wants you to believe that my weight makes me a danger. I argue the opposite: it has made me resilient. I have built a career under constant scrutiny. I have fought bias in every courtroom I've ever sat in, and I have done it without compromising my integrity. If I can withstand that for strangers, Your Honor, imagine how fiercely I protect my son. I stepped back, letting the silence settle. Then softly but firmly, I finished. Fat is not a failing. It is not instability. It is simply a body. What defines me is my record, my responsibility, and the love I've given Tyler every single day of his life. And that, Your Honor, is the only evidence that should matter here. When I sat down, I felt the weight in the room shift. My side of the gallery, once nearly empty, was no longer silent. Friends nodded, eyes glistening. Even some strangers leaned forward as if rooting for me. Tyler's gaze met mine. His lips curved into the smallest smile. And in that moment, I knew he understood. He finally saw not just his mother, but the strength I had carried quietly all along. The silence that followed my final words was unlike any courtroom silence I'd ever known. It wasn't routine, it wasn't procedural, it was heavy charged, alive. Even Judge Morrison paused longer than usual, as if weighing not just the evidence but the venom and prejudice that had poisoned the air. When she finally leaned forward, her voice was steady. Given the testimony and documentation presented, and the concerning reliance on personal bias from certain witnesses, this court finds that the best interests of the child are served by granting full physical custody to Ms. Hayes. The words landed like a gavel on my heart. Visitation for the father, she continued, will be supervised for the next 6 months, pending his completion of a co-parenting program. After that, the court may review the matter. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All the tension I had caged inside me, all the fire I'd forced into silence, rushed out at once. Tyler was mine, safe, protected. Across the aisle, Marcus's jaw dropped. The arrogance he had carried all morning evaporated, leaving only a stunned, hollow look. His lawyer scribbled something frantically, but even he knew the case was lost. And my mother, her face had gone pale. The certainty she had wielded with such cruelty now cracked into disbelief. I stood slowly, my hands trembling not with fear, but with release. Tyler bolted from the front row before anyone could stop him. He threw his arms around my waist, his voice muffled against me. Mom, does this mean you won? I bent down, meeting his wide, tear-brimmed eyes. It means you're staying with me. Always. His little arms tightened, his smile breaking through the confusion of the morning. I knew they were wrong, he whispered. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. Because even though I had fought with every ounce of strategy, evidence, and authority I had, it wasn't just about winning custody. It was about proving to Tyler, to the court, to myself, that I was more than their insults. Judge Morrison closed the file, her tone final. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder. As people began to shuffle out, whispers buzzing behind me, I felt my spine straighten. I wasn't just walking out as the mother who had won custody. I was walking out as a woman who had turned their cruelty into a weapon they couldn't control. Marcus avoided my gaze, his fists clenched at his sides. My mother lingered near the stand. Her lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but no words came. Karen finally looked up, shame written across her face. But I didn't wait for apologies. Not then. I had what mattered most, Tyler's hand. In mine, his pride shining brighter than any courtroom light. And as we stepped into the hallway, past the stairs and murmurs, one thought carried me forward. They had tried to bury me under shame, but instead they had handed me the stage to rise higher than ever. The hallway outside the courtroom felt colder than the chamber itself. Marble walls, fluorescent lights, the shuffle of shoes echoing like judgment that refused to end. I held Tyler's hand tightly, his small fingers curled around mine like an anchor. That's when I heard her voice. Rebecca. My mother stood a few steps away. Her shoulders hunched, the fire that had fueled her testimony gone. For the first time all day she looked small. I didn't realize. I didn't know how much you had accomplished. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought I was helping. Helping. The word stung. She had tried to help by shaming me, by painting me as too big, too weak, too unworthy of my own child. I could still hear her words echoing in that courtroom. She'll collapse under the weight. I met her eyes steady and cold. You testified under oath that I was an unfit mother without knowing anything about my life, my career, or my health. You were ready to destroy my relationship with my son based on prejudice. Her eyes filled with tears. I was afraid for him. No, I said firmly. You were ashamed of me, and you turned that shame into a weapon. That's not protection. That's betrayal. She flinched as if I had struck her, but I didn't soften. Not anymore. Behind her, Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw clenched. His eyes flickered with resentment, not regret. He muttered, I just wanted what's best for Tyler. I turned on him. What's best for Tyler is honesty, stability. A parent who shows up, not one who hides behind body shaming and half truths. You didn't want custody, you wanted control. He looked away, no retort left. Then Karen approached, her face pale guilt carved into every line. She spoke barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Becca. I should have said something. I didn't want to go against Mom. I shook my head slowly. Silence is just another kind of betrayal, Karen. When you sit and watch while someone tears your sister apart, you're not neutral, you're complicit. She lowered her gaze, her lips pressed tight. No argument to offer. Tyler tugged at my sleeve, his small voice breaking the heavy silence. Mom, can we just go home? I looked down at him, then back at the people who had tried to strip me of everything. My mother weeping quietly, Marcus stone-faced, Karen trembling with shame. I felt no victory in their defeat, only clarity. Yes, I said to Tyler. We're going home. I turned my back on them, walking away with my son. Each step down that hallway felt like shedding another layer of the weight they had tried to bury me under. 6 months later, life looked different. Not perfect, never perfect, but steady, strong hours. Marcus had completed his court-ordered co-parenting classes. He earned back limited, unsupervised visitation, but the arrogance he once carried had dimmed. The court's judgment had forced him into humility, and for the first time I saw him treat Tyler like more than a prize to be fought over. My mother wrote me a long letter. Apologies spilled across the pages, excuses, explanations, regret. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer. I never opened again. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some bridges once burned are not rebuilt. Karen visited a few times quieter than she used to be. She didn't try to justify her silence in court. She just sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, eyes downcast, trying to earn her way back into my trust, one small gesture at a time. Maybe in time she would, but forgiveness isn't free, it's earned. As for Tyler, he changed the most. He no longer looked at me with the confusion of that courtroom day. He looked at me with pride. He bragged to his friends, my mom's a judge. She fights for families. She fights for me. His smile was proof that the scars of betrayal could heal if given love and honesty. And me, I stopped hiding. For too long, I had lived quietly, shrinking myself to avoid scrutiny, letting my body be the first thing people judged instead of my record, my work, my heart. But the courtroom taught me something. I'll never forget hiding. Your light doesn't protect you. It only makes it easier for others to underestimate you. Now I wear my accomplishments openly. I live fully without apology. I let Tyler see not just the mother who tucks him in at night, but the woman who has built a life on integrity and hard work. Because justice isn't just something you hand down from a bench. Sometimes it's something you claim for yourself. And when the people closest to you try to bury you under shame, the sweetest revenge is rising so high they have no choice but to look up